Welcome, everyone, to It's Time to Excel. Believe it or not, it's yet another Wednesday, and we are here. And it is your time, it is my time, it is our time to excel. And I'm so glad that you're willing to join us today and looking so forward to kind of talking about this topic today because this is the place where we inspire and we ignite the possibilities, especially for our small business owners. But of course, the topic today that we're going to be talking about is a lovely little word called budget. And everybody usually cringes and runs, and especially if you're not numbers people, you tend to run from that little conversation. But that's okay. I've never been normal. I'm not going to claim to start now. But budgeting is something that is really, really vital. So I wanted to take the opportunity and kind of just talk a little bit about that because I want to ask you, for anybody that's listening here and kind of joining us in here live or even on the replay, go in there. Do you actually go ahead and have a budget? Enter yes in there if you're willing to admit it. Maybe no, because maybe you don't. Or is it just a little four-letter word? Eh, that's what we're going to explore today. So as I said, welcome to It's Time to Excel, and we are going to dive directly, because you know my philosophy, let's just jump right on into the deep end and let's just, sink or swim because we're not going to sink because we are supporting one another and we are moving forward. So let's talk about this crazy word called budget. uh, Okay, now that you're like terrified, it's okay. So we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to take this one step at a time. We're going to just kind of walk through and kind of break down some things to be thinking about when you're talking about budgeting. And one thing that I have learned, especially working with a lot of small business owners, is when they have a budget in place and they're willing to use that budget and they are willing to adhere to that budget, does that budget mean it's absolutely set in stone? Of course not. Nothing is set in stone. Nothing is set in stone, but it's a tool. It is simply a tool that is going to allow you to know exactly what money is flowing in and out of your business. But better yet, remember what I've always said, your business and your personal finances, they mirror each other. So what you do in your business life, you do in your personal life and vice versa. So the odds are if you're doing one in your personal life, you're probably doing one in your business or vice versa on that one. But does that seem overwhelming? But it doesn't have to be. The same concepts hold true, whether it's business or personal. We're going to focus, of course, a little bit on on the business side rather than personal, because that's kind of where our focus usually is here for It's Time to Excel. But you can apply the same logic over to your personal side. So, knowing how money is flowing in and out of your business is absolutely vital. And it's really easy to actually understand that whole process if you're willing to use a budget. And I mentioned before, is it just isn't a four-letter word? And I will argue that budget is absolutely a four-letter word. And depending on who's listening, I can't always tell who they are. I got a thumbs up. It is only a four-letter word. And some of you guys have heard me speak before and know what my philosophy is. You may have worked with me in the past. Budgeting is a four-letter word. And I'm going to challenge you on that one because absolutely it is a four-letter word. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So what we're going to do is let's talk about setting it up. What do you need to do? How do we get this thing going? Where do we even start? So one of the easiest ways, yes, you can always go back to pen and paper, but for a budget, I kind of like using at least a spreadsheet. The cool thing with QuickBooks, it actually has a budget feature built into it, so that's a whole other ballgame. But if you are a QuickBooks Online user and you have at least the Plus version, budget is a feature in there. And I love to work with my clients with that one to be able, because it really makes it so much simpler for them. But let's just talk about thinking about this. At least get a spreadsheet ready to go. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to be able to summarize all of the money coming in and out of your business as far as income is concerned, as far as expenses are concerned. But even more so than just that, this tool is going to allow you to plan ahead because a budget is actually done twice in the month. Okay, yeah, I'm really kind of probably flipping some people out, but that's okay. It's more fun that way. So when we're talking about this, the budget, you start with your budget in the beginning of the month and you guess, quote unquote, what exactly you think is going to happen. That's the first part of the budget. So you come up and you set up what you think is going to happen. And that guess is actually an educated guess because you're going to use the past to determine the future. And then you're going to take into consideration what's going on. So if you have some history that is available to you, and you have been tracking like I have been encouraging you to do right along, because remember this year we are really focusing in. Hammy has joined me, and Hammy Hamilton from Money Doesn't Spend Itself. We are really looking to make sure that we are getting our Hamiltons turned into Benjamins. And how are you going to do that? You're going to need a budget. You're absolutely going to need a budget, because you've got to be able to plan a little bit, and then you got to find out whether or not how close you got to that plan. Because without that, it makes it super, super challenging and almost next to impossible. So you really want to get around this and kind of at least get the foundation set for a budget in your business. So as we're looking at that, and we're going to start kind of building that foundation, we can do that by using Excel. So the first thing we want to do is we want to go back to last month. And even if you don't have it tracked, go to your bank statements. At least get your ins and outs. And at least maybe generically break up those outs at least and break up those ins, so you have some broad categories. We have to start where you're at. And you guys know my philosophy on what is the best system for you. You start with the one that you're going to use. And you're going to start where you're at too. This is not something, it is an ongoing process. You're going to continually tweak it. You are going to continue to improve it one step at a time. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So taking into there, I love Dave Ramsey's quote here. And Dave Ramsey always says, a budget is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. So basically what we're going to do is budget a 4-letter word? Absolutely. Budget is absolutely a 4-letter word. And it's simply a plan. You are going to plan where your money's going because you're going to do it up front. And it's amazing where you can pretty much tell your money where to go if you're willing to take the time to do it. And by doing that, think of all the benefits that that'll come up with. So let's look at this. We have planning involved in budgeting. So it allows us to anticipate some of the ins and outs that are coming into play. Let's say you're in a business that's very cyclical, and maybe you have months that are a lot higher and months that are a lot lower. A budget allows you to kind of plan out that and kind of even that out. So in the good months, you got to save back a little bit. In the not so good months, you have money that's saved back so that you can continue to operate the way that you need to and the way that you want to. But you have to have a budget in place to do that. It then allows you to analyze. So it allows you to go ahead and take an opportunity to analyze what happened. So at the beginning of the month, we set our budget for the month. We set up, our income, what we're hoping that income will be. But that hope is not exactly a hope because you're planning for it. You have used the past and you're actually planning. So now you know what you're aiming for. And when you know what you're aiming for, it's a lot easier to get there. So then you take it at the end of the month and you start analyzing. Did all that income come in that you expected? Was there more expenses than expected? What happened? And by looking at that and coming back and forth, now you can start telling, do I need to make some changes? Oh, that worked. Let me continue to do that. Funny thing, you don't always have to change things. If you realize it's working, then repeat it. Yes, you can add some things new, but don't always just completely radically all change things. But if you have a budget and you see where you're starting from, what you ended with, what the ins and outs were, what the differences were, now all of a sudden you can make a lot better educated guess for next month. And you get to repeat this process. Is it a little bit cumbersome? Of course it is. Welcome to business. Do you want control of your finances, or do you want to let them control you? That's your choice. But if you want to excel, and I know that you do, because that's why you're here, and that is why you have support, and that's why we have joined together, is because you want to excel. And the only way you're going to excel is to get this budget in place. It's one of the tools that are necessary to run a successful business. And a lot of times, by doing this, and you're thinking about those unexpected, you guys know my philosophy on unexpected expenses. They're not really unexpected, are they? No, they're just inevitable. We know that Murphy and Mayhem, I always say they love to come in the front door, the back door, I throw them out a window, they come in the other side. That's just part of life. It is part of what happens. There's always something that comes up, whether it's a kid getting sick, a fur baby getting sick, you getting sick, and that list goes on. And those are really unexpected, but right now we just don't know. Maybe a car drops, doesn't work quite as expected. Maybe your computer goes. Maybe the lights don't go. Maybe the internet, we have to switch something. I mean, this list can get endless. But if you have a budget in place and you have a plan in place, remember, budget's just a four-letter word, it's a plan. If you've got a plan in place, how much easier it is to actually account and deal with all those unexpected things that pop up. And that's what we want to do. So as I said, Dave Ramsey summed it up so a budget is simply telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. And we get the systems in place to do that. Because without it, it's really hard to hit financial goals. I don't care how hard you try. If you don't know what your plan is and you have no idea what direction you're going in, it's really hard to hit your financial goals because you don't know what they are. And I always love to, throw the analogy is you could be aiming straight forward to that bullseye. The only problem is if you don't have the budget and the tools and the systems in place, you may be driving full speed ahead and the bullseye's behind you and you don't know it. And that's not where we want to go. So we want to not make it so difficult to achieve our goals because we're going to put that budget in place. And it's really crazy. I've seen companies with $100,000 revenues be more profitable than the $500,000 companies who don't have the tools in place and the systems in place. Their profits are less than the $100,000 revenue. Think about that. And I have seen that happen over and over. And that is not what we want. We want to utilize the tools that are at our fingertips, and we want to use them to the benefit and growth of our business. So this budget allows us, if we want to make sure that we are aiming for the right goals, we need to know what those goals are. And then we need to know, do we need to make a little detour? Do we need to make a little tweak? Do we need to completely flip it on its head and turn it upside down? And the answer may be yes, but you won't know that unless you use what you have tracked to determine your budget and then analyze at the end of the month where that budget fell. Were you up, down, over, under, what was going on? And that allows you to clarify your direction. And when you're clear on your direction, you can achieve your goal. All right. Without a budget, I've also found it very challenging to get a savings in place. Because there's one thing with a budget that it forces you to do. And if you use it properly, it forces you to be proactive. And funny thing, when you're proactive, it's a lot less stressful. So as money's coming in, you're already telling it where to go. Because remember, that's what the whole budget is. It's a plan. And you're already allocating it out. So maybe you have $1,000 coming in and you're going to allocate out to different buckets of whatever those expenses are going to be. One of those buckets needs to be a savings account. Because remember, we talked about Murphy and Mayhem. Remember, they come in the side doors, windows, up, down. Like you kick them out, they fly back in the other door. It's amazing. They're little creepy. The little gremlins get in there. They absolutely do. But if you're being proactive and you automatically take a portion of the income coming in and you put it into a savings account, now all of a sudden you can cushion some of the chaos that comes your way. And it allows you to actually control what you're saving. So yes, you will have a savings in place. And even better yet, I want you to encourage you to make sure you have a paycheck in place, especially if you're in business here. Your business should be supporting your lifestyle. You can't do that if you're not making sure money's set aside. You don't know if your expenses are out of control unless you're looking at them. And a budget allows you, because you know what you're thinking and you know what you're planning on doing. The question is, did you get there? But it's a lot easier when you have a budget in place and you know exactly how much money you have to work with. You can make much better educated decisions, and you will have those savings and you will have those paychecks in place, which is exactly what you want to be doing. In addition to that, think about it. Without knowing exactly what's going on, without having a good plan in place, without having that budget tool at your fingertips and actually using it, 9 times out of 10, your debt's going to skyrocket. It is a lot harder to control debt when you have no idea what it is. So too often, I get a ballpark of where I'm at. Ballparks don't lead to long-term success. We are here to excel. We are absolutely here to excel. And that is getting control of your finances, getting control of that debt. Does debt happen? It does. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. But you can control your debt. And that's perfectly fine. In business, there are times where you have to invest in something and then you have a plan to pay it off. Did you hear that word? Plan to pay it off. So it's part of your business expenses, period. By doing that, you control your debt, and actually you can really get that debt down to next to nothing. which at times makes a lot of sense, especially on your personal side. If you can reduce your debt, think about how less stressful that will actually be. And you cannot get there without using a budget. It just doesn't happen. And we talked a little bit about, unexpected things. They come up every time we turn around. So you know what that needs to be? A line item in your budget. You have your savings account, that's great. You have an emergency fund, that's great. All of those are tools and being proactive because you're thinking about it up front when you're actually doing your budget and you're planning for it because you know it's going to happen. In addition to that, I love to go ahead and make sure that I have my insurance money allocated out. I want to make sure that I have my taxes allocated out. What do I mean by that? I have them in a separate account. I don't want to worry when the bill comes due and that invoice comes due that I don't have any clue how I'm going to pay it. I know it was due. I knew I had 12 months to pay it. Isn't it so much easier to take, if I have a $1,200 bill that is due in 12 months, isn't it much easier to come up with $100 a month than to come up with $1,200 in one? In my world, it is. And I suspect for most of you, it probably will be the same. I don't want to be stressed coming up with $1,200 in 1 month. I just don't want to do that, especially when I knew that it was there. So what do? I take out $100 a month and I pop it into another account. So here's the cool thing. When that invoice comes due, write it out of the account and move on. It can be that simple, a lot less stressful when you know it's sitting there. You know these things are happening. You know they're coming. Plan for them. Put them as line items in your budget. I have a whole category in mind that I call my committed expenses. And what is that? It's simply all of those lovely yearly charges, such as software that I use for my business, such as insurance that I know is coming due, such as renewals for memberships that are due annually. Very often you can get a discount, quote unquote. It's cheaper to buy it annual than it is to do it monthly. Okay, so think about that. So if I can always take advantage of the annual, I'm actually saving some money, putting more money in my pocket, which is exactly what I'm looking to do. And I'm sure that you are as well. So by doing that, what have we done? By putting the budget in place, we can actually lower a lot of our stress levels. Money is a hot topic right now. Money can get out of control really, really quickly right now. Things as we knew it was changing. It's just part of life. But by having a solid budget in place, you can navigate a lot of these changes, a lot of this craziness, and you can reduce your stress. And when you reduce stress, you make better decisions. I don't know about you, but if I'm stressed out and flipping out and spazzing out, I don't typically make the best decisions. If I'm making them in anger, I tend to get myself injured. Seems to be a characteristic. I will do something so silly, like stomping on the floor in my bare feet on a wooden floor and then up hairline fracturing my foot. It is part of the deal. But you know what? Because I was upset, I was mad, I reacted. We don't want to react. Reaction is not what we want to do. We want to be proactive. We want to have that plan in place. And when you know what you need to do, think about it. If you have a fire, what's the first? Have an escape route. Think about when we were in school. We were just starting to, when we were in school. Date myself. Anyhow, thinking about this. You had an escape plan. If there's a fire, what is the escape route? Think of your budget as that. It is allowing you to be able to navigate and be able to start controlling that money. And it reduces the stress because you're not thinking about it as much. What you're doing is you are coordinating your thinking process at the beginning of the month to know where you want to go, at the end of the month to see how well it worked, and then adjusting what needs to happen. So the next month, you're even closer. The next month, you're even closer to the ultimate goal. And does the goal change a little bit? In essence, yes, because you are looking to grow. You are looking to thrive. You are looking to move forward. You are looking for stability. And all that can be accomplished by taking the time to actually budget. And when you're doing that and not being stressed out on top of it, it makes such a huge difference. You can actually make a lot better decisions, a lot more educated decisions, and a lot more successful decisions by simply having that in place. And it allows you to go ahead and take care of that. You know, one of the things that's always taught, and you'll hear this referred to, Dave Ramsey refers to it a lot, is a zero-based budget. And what is that? In a nutshell, it's pretty simple. If you have $1,000 coming in your month, you should, at the beginning of the month, allocate, quote unquote, which is simply a fancy word for taking that $1,000 and saying, I'm going to spend it on A, B, C, and D. Okay. The bottom line then is zero. So I have $1,000 and I've accounted for $1,000 because now money can't figure out where it's going because I've already told it where it's going to go. I've already said that I've got X amount of dollars for savings, for my paycheck, for my expenses, for my committed, for my insurance, and the list goes on and on. So in a very quick nutshell, you want to plan your budget to being a zero-based budget because you want to make sure everything is accounted for. That crazy word that I always talk about, you got to be accounted for. And it doesn't have to be complicated. An Excel spreadsheet works very, very well. I use an Excel spreadsheet. I have done that for years. When I convert over to QuickBooks, I have gotten it over into QuickBooks. But there's still a few things that I like to really navigate in and really dig down into. And that's for me personally. Does that mean it's going to? Not necessarily. But the bottom line is I'm using the tool. I am making sure that part of my analysis, I'm looking at the beginning of the month, making sure where I think the money is going to go. At the end of the month, I'm checking out to make sure it did. Do I have everything into place? Did I add an extra software that I need to add in that committed expenses? This happened so quick. Oh, let me go try this one. Hey, this is going to be useful for me. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Oh, it's only $100 in a year. Okay, those $100 can add up really quick when they all come due in the same month. But if you're planning for it, split $100 over 12 months. Look at that. A lot better number to deal with, and probably a lot easier to allocate back. So that's exactly what a budget's doing. It's taking it and you're planning ahead. You're navigating the direction that you want to go, and you're making sure that you get there. And a lot of times, what's the easiest way to do it? When I work with my clients, I simply encourage a split based on the percentage. So what I do is I have a system in place, and yes, it is an Excel spreadsheet, but I do have it working that it coordinates into QuickBooks, and we actually have built in within QuickBooks itself a way that you can have your envelope system. So I have my buckets of money sitting out there in my account. Remember, as I said, I had kind of pushed it off to the side to a separate account. I actually have a way that I have worked with and that I share with my clients that will actually help you so that you can pick up your phone and know exactly how much you have set aside for insurance, for committed expenses, so that you know as things are coming in, you know exactly where you're at. And that is a coordination between Excel and QuickBooks for me. And that's something that I encourage folks, find a system that's going to work. And what I do is I simply allocate it based on percentages. So let's think about it. If I have $1,000 coming in, 100% of that is $1,000. All I got to do is add up to 100%. So what do? There's some guidelines, but it's each and every one is a little bit different. Each and every one is going to be slightly, each industry is going to be a little bit different. And that's okay. That's okay. That's the importance of just finding out what's going to work for you. And where do you have to start? Where you're at. Where you're at. Start somewhere. That's all we need to do. And there's a lot of different guidelines that are out there. And kind of see, I use a lot of Mike Michalowicz to kind of get a starting point. And he is author of Profit First. And that is an area that's a good starting point. But that's all it is a starting point. But it has to be tweaked for you. It has to be tweaked for your industry, for your specific, and I'm checking out my notes here, but that's all right. So what are some of those percentages? Whether it's a 60-40 rule, whether it's a 70-30, I mean, I can go on day and pick numbers out of the blue and kind of go. But once again, you've got to start somewhere. So a lot of times for your salary, I mean, maybe it's 15% of what you're bringing in. Maybe it's 20%. You got to see, because you only got 100 to work with. So we've got to break out all of this and see. And where do you start? You take last month. You see what happened. You see how much went to individual categories. Okay, that gives you a ballpark. That gives you a starting point. So once, if I'm working with my clients, I look at that and I said, okay, so yeah, I'd love to have 50% of my income to go into my pocket. I haven't quite made that work at this point in the game. Not about sure about you, but if you can't, more power to you. Even in my Mary Kay business, when I did that, it was a 60-40 split. But I did get 40%, but that 40% wasn't only my paycheck, it was my expenses as well. So you're going to start somewhere. So even if you start with your budget for really having your salaries is maybe about 15%, it's a good starting point, 15-20% ideal. Maybe you can't get there right away. That's okay because you can work towards it. Remember, that's what this whole budget is about. It's about working towards your goal. And potentially when you're just starting out, you may have over 50-60% that are expenses going out into rent and uh, loans and things like that. So you've got to account for all of that. The bottom line is you're going down through and you're splitting up that 100%. You're starting where you're at. And once you see where that money's being spent and you're seeing what the true categories really, really are, and when you're comparing it to what's coming in to what's going out, you may find a few spots of expenses that you may decide, you know what, I really don't need that. Maybe I don't need to have that software in place. Maybe I do. I don't know. That is a business decision. But the key thing is now you know what decision you have to make. And you're going to look at it and you're going to prioritize because that's what a budget does. It helps you to prioritize. It helps you to look down through and see what do I need to change. If my expenses are out of control, guess what? I got to get rid of some of them or I got to increase my revenues. That's my two choices. Think about it. But if you know your budget, you know exactly where you're at, it makes such a huge difference. But thinking about that, so as you're going, as I said, break out those expenses. Start where you're at. Break it up into a salary. Break it up into your taxes. Break it up into operating expenses. And operating expenses are simply all the expenses that you're required to deal with in business. And those are the ones that can get you a lot out of control. And within the operating, find the ones that are non-negotiable, which means you've already committed to them. And then find the ones that maybe you can adjust. Maybe you don't need this software right now. Maybe it's something you can eliminate for right now and maybe do later on. Maybe it's not. You've got to have and take a look and prioritize everything that's part of your business. And then, only then, can you take it against where you're at in your income. And if your income is going to support it, by all means, take advantage of the tools that are available. Or be smarter about the tools or use the tools that you have at your fingertips. I find that so often when I'm working with clients, whether it's Microsoft Excel, whether it's QuickBooks Online, whether it's Zoho CRM, and the list goes on, they're using this much of it. The tool you're already paying for, use it. If you've got QuickBooks Online and you're at least at the plus level, then by all means, let's talk about using the budget feature. You don't even have to deal with it in Excel. It's already built into the software for you. You just may not realize it. And I think that's such a valuable thing when you're thinking about things. Use the tools that you have. And sometimes, yes, you've got to have different softwares to complete different tasks because it's the most, you use their strengths. But make sure you're using the software for what it's designed for and to the extent that it's available to you. Because too often that happens, and that is not where we want to go. So, thinking about that, I want to thank you so much. So, hopefully, that got your mind thinking about some budgeting and how to kind of get there and kind of get it started in general. And if you'd like to learn a little bit more, or you'd just like to have a little bit of a conversation and say, okay, what can I do? What direction? What can we do? Wait, you're still confused. I'd love to invite you to have a little chat with me. Let's have a chat. You can go to chatwithjanet.com, make it really, really simple. We can focus on profits. We can focus on the tools. It's just a block of time where we can actually take a few minutes and see how we can put our hands around and start building this foundation. I've got several different courses that are coming up. I'd love to have you as part of them. Even better yet, I'd love to know what you'd like to have going forward. What would be beneficial for you? What kind of courses would be beneficial that would help you to excel and thrive going forward? You guys know you're always welcome on the second Wednesday of every month. That is our virtual Lunch and Learn. And March's Lunch and Learn is on Canva. We have been going a techie route for the last couple of months. We've talked about Excel. We've talked about Zoho. And this month, or next month, sorry, in March, we're going to be talking about Canva. And it's just a way to kind of start getting out there and seeing what Canva can offer and looking at that and seeing how we can do that. And those are always, they're always welcome to anyone that would love to join us. And it's always fun because I never know who's going to come. And it's really cool because I have my key points that I want to bring up into the virtual Lunch and Learn time slot. And it's always fun because it always goes in 3 other different directions because it's all based upon who joins me. And it's based so that you walk away knowing how to use the software better than what you walked into. And that's what I really want to encourage. So please mark your calendars for that. Go ahead and put the second Wednesday at 11:30. From 11:30 to 12:30. I'm pretty strategic on time there. So I want to be very, very respectful of your time. And we get started. We do a little networking in the beginning. We do a little networking at the end. And we have about a half an hour where we really dive deep into the various softwares that are available. At least, as I said, for next month, it'll be Canva. What is going to be beneficial for you? If you're not quite sure, you just want to come and ask, you just want to kind of see what it's able, put on your calendars and join us. In the meantime, if you're ever looking at trying it, and if you're using QuickBooks Online right now, and that is something that you have not explored as far as the budgeting tool, please book a call with me. Let me at least share with you where it's at, give you a little snippet of how that kind of works, and see if it's something that if you already have the tool, why not use it? Or even if it's in Excel. And I would love to encourage you. Stop back periodically, find out what's available, and let me know. So drop in the chat what you think would be beneficial for you. What would you love to have as far as some type of support to be able to do there? What kind of workshops would be beneficial? And I'd love to hear from you. So thank you guys so very much. Don't forget to put that on your calendar for Wednesdays at 11:30, where it's time to excel. And by all means, make sure you put the virtual lunch and learn out there so that you can join us in March and learn a little bit more about how Canva can be a tool in your business. And Canva has a free option too, so that's even better yet. So take a look at there. Let me know how I can support you, and stop back because it is time to excel. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. And if you come in on the replay, just go ahead and drop in replay so that I know that you're getting out there and if there's anything that we can do. So thanks again, everyone. Have an absolutely wonderful and blessed day. Take care.